In the dimly lit workshop, the gunsmith worked tirelessly, the smell of oil and metal hanging heavy in the air. As sparks flew from the lathe and the rhythmic hum of machinery echoed off the walls, each movement precise, deliberate, yet imbued with a sense of daring that bordered on recklessness. Because what he was attempting had never been tried before, and yet it carried the potential to revolutionize the battlefield, to transform the way soldiers engaged enemy armor. And as he studied the rifling of the bazooka barrel, turning the steel with a practiced hand, he envisioned rockets slicing through inches of hardened steel, defying conventional expectations. And as the first prototype emerged, polished, rifled with the reckless specifications he had devised in secrecy, a mix of anticipation, fear, and audacious ambition electrified the room, knowing that failure would be catastrophic. But success would alter the course of combat entirely. And when the first live test was conducted, the rocket's roar shattered the air, smoke curling and metal singing as it struck the target, a thick steel plate, and penetrated in a way no one had predicted, bending the laws of conventional warfare in an instant, sending engineers, soldiers, and commanders into disbelief, while the gunsmith, standing quietly, observing the controlled chaos he had unleashed, knew the implications of that moment would ripple through training manuals, battle strategies, and enemy designs for decades. And as word spread through military channels, from workshop to field, excitement and skepticism intertwined. Debates erupted over the audacity of the design. And yet every calculation, every modification, and every sleepless night of the gunsmith's labor had produced a weapon that defied expectation, reshaping the very nature of anti-armor warfare. And as soldiers handled the newly rifled bazookas, feeling the weight, balance, and responsiveness, they sensed a weapon transformed, its rockets carrying not just explosive payloads, but a tangible promise of penetrative power. A capability previously relegated to specialized units and improbable scenarios, and the psychological impact of such a tool, wielded by disciplined, trained forces, could not be underestimated, because the ability to pierce 8 inches of steel meant the difference between stalling against an enemy tank and decisively neutralizing a strategic threat. And in the minds of every observer, the gunsmith's name became synonymous with daring innovation, ingenuity, and a willingness to challenge convention. And as military planners assessed deployment, logistics, and training, they realized that one man's reckless alteration of rifling had created a tactical paradigm shift, compelling strategies to be rewritten, doctrines reconsidered, and enemy armor engineers to question their assumptions. And as the first units equipped with the new bazookas began field exercises, their accuracy, penetration, and reliability astonished officers, soldiers, and allied engineers alike, while the Germans and other adversaries soon faced an unforeseen escalation, their tanks and armored vehicles suddenly vulnerable to a threat that had originated from the vision and courage of a single craftsman, whose dedication to innovation, technical mastery, and willingness to embrace risk had produced a weapon that could rewrite the rules of engagement. And as reports from the front lines began to trickle back, documenting unprecedented penetrations, altered battle outcomes, and the morale impact of previously invulnerable armor being shattered, the narrative of warfare itself shifted. As soldiers adapted to new tactics, engineers optimized training, and commanders reconsidered offensive and defensive strategies, while the gunsmith, often removed from the battlefield yet intimately connected through his craft, quietly observed the ripple effects of his work, knowing that each rocket fired, each plate penetrated, and each tactical success represented both the genius and audacity of a single decision made in a workshop that had dared to defy limits. And as history would later record, it was not simply the weapon, but the singular act of innovation, risk, and technical brilliance that had allowed a bazooka to pierce 8 inches of steel, a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and the transformative potential of one person's relentless pursuit of what others had deemed impossible. And in this moment, the stage was set for the incredible, suspense-filled journey of deployment, adaptation, heroism, and further innovation. As the gunsmith's reckless rifling change prepared to shape battles, inspire soldiers, and leave a lasting imprint on the annals of military history, a narrative of tension, suspense, and audacious success that would captivate, engage, and astonish anyone who bore witness to the story of how a single act of courage and technical daring forever altered the trajectory of war. As the newly rifled bazookas reached the front lines, the soldiers' hands trembled slightly, half from the chill of early morning, half from the anticipation of wielding a weapon that defied every expectation, and as they loaded the first rockets, the weight and balance of the launchers felt both familiar and profoundly altered. The recoil slightly different, the roar slightly sharper, carrying a promise of penetrative force that electrified the atmosphere. And when the first rocket soared across the field, leaving a streak of smoke and flame in its wake, the target, a thick, reinforced steel plate, stood as the ultimate test of the gunsmith's innovation, and with a thunderous impact, the rocket struck, piercing steel in a way that left soldiers, officers, and engineers momentarily frozen in awe. A collective realization dawning that the calculations, sleepless nights, and audacious rifling change had transformed theory into extraordinary reality, and as repeated tests were conducted under varying conditions, wind, distance, angle, the results consistently confirmed the unprecedented capability of these rockets, creating a wave of exhilaration, disbelief, and tactical reevaluation across units, while soldiers, initially trained to expect limited effectiveness, began adjusting their techniques, recalibrating aim, and experimenting with positioning, understanding that the weapon's new power demanded both respect and strategic ingenuity, and as commanding officers observed, notes were taken, firing protocols were updated, and engagement strategies were rewritten to incorporate the newfound penetration ability, while enemy armor engineers, oblivious to the specific mechanical adjustments, faced a looming threat that rendered previously invulnerable tanks suddenly vulnerable, forcing rapid adaptation and reconsideration of defensive tactics. And the psychological impact on the battlefield was immediate, as the soldiers' confidence surged, their movements more precise, their coordination tighter, and their willingness to engage previously formidable targets grew exponentially, while the enemy, encountering unexpected penetrations and altered outcomes, experienced confusion, hesitancy, and a creeping doubt about the reliability of their defenses. And as reconnaissance and field reports streamed back, detailing the remarkable penetrative success, the narrative of the conflict began to shift. Commanders realizing that individual skill, tactical positioning, and courage could now be augmented by a weapon capable of leveling steel armor, and the soldiers, inspired by repeated demonstrations, internalized the weapon's capabilities, experimenting with angles, timing, and combined operations, translating the gunsmith's innovation into practical, life-saving effectiveness, while each impact left an indelible mark, not only on the steel but on the minds of those witnessing, reinforcing morale, initiative, and a sense of historical significance. And as the fog of war rolled across the terrain, carrying the echoes of rockets, artillery, and shouted commands, the soldiers adapted seamlessly, integrating lessons learned from every engagement, refining approach and continuously testing limits. Their movements, reactions, and coordination, a testament to both training and the psychological momentum generated by a weapon that now carried both lethal force and inspiring innovation. And as nightfall approached, the final rounds of testing underscored the transformative impact of the rifling change, demonstrating that what had begun as a daring experiment in a quiet workshop had now manifested as a decisive battlefield advantage, reshaping engagement strategies, unit confidence, and the perception of armored invincibility, while historians and military observers would later reflect on this moment as the tipping point where ingenuity, risk, and technical mastery combined to redefine the capabilities of infantry-launched rockets, turning previously improbable feats into tactical certainty, and the soldiers, having experienced firsthand the awe-inspiring performance, carried not only the rockets, but the ethos of ingenuity, courage, and adaptation forward, preparing for subsequent battles. Understanding that each successful penetration was more than metal pierced, it was the embodiment of one gunsmith's daring vision, realized under fire, integrated into strategy, and immortalized in the annals of warfare, a story of suspense, human reaction, tactical brilliance, and mechanical audacity that would captivate and engage any observer, compelling attention and leaving a lasting impression of the extraordinary potential unlocked by a single act of technical courage. As the newly rifled bazookas reached the front lines, their presence transformed the dynamics of combat almost immediately, for soldiers had long been taught the limitations of rocket launchers and now, holding in their hands weapons capable of piercing 8 inches of steel, every heartbeat carried the weight of anticipation, the electricity of possibility, and the tense calculation of risk versus reward. And as the first real engagement unfolded, enemy tanks advanced with imposing silhouettes through smoke, mud, and terrain that had previously granted them near invincibility. Yet the soldiers, trained rigorously but now imbued with a renewed sense of tactical empowerment, moved with deliberate coordination, positioning themselves in concealed trenches, behind rubble and among wooded cover, calculating angles, distances, and trajectories with a mixture of instinct and methodical precision. And as the first bazooka was raised, aimed and fired, the rocket roared through the air, leaving a streak of flame and smoke that seemed to hang, suspended in anticipation before striking the tank, sending sparks, twisted metal, and a momentary shockwave across the battlefield, freezing both allies and enemies in awe of the result. And as the second, third, and subsequent rockets followed in rapid succession, the soldiers' confidence grew, their focus sharpened, and their movements became a fluid ballet of preparation, aim, timing, and concealment, while the enemy, previously impervious to infantry-launched ordnance, now faced the terrifying reality of vulnerability, confusion rippling through the armored crews as shots penetrated once impenetrable armor, explosions sending echoes through the battlefield and sending tactical ripple effects that forced immediate adjustments, retreats, and recalculations. And as the battle intensified, soldiers adapted to every micro-movement, leveraging terrain, cover, and the new capabilities of their weapons to maximize effect, timing every shot to coincide with enemy hesitation, exploiting openings created by smoke, misalignment, or momentary lapses in concentration, and with every successful penetration, the psychological momentum shifted further, not just empowering the Americans, but instilling hesitation, doubt, and fear in the adversaries, altering their decision-making, strategy, and cohesion. And as the engagements continued, soldiers coordinated in squads, combining firepower with positioning, maintaining continuous observation, and anticipating enemy maneuvers, turning what could have been chaotic exchanges into controlled sequences of tactical dominance, where each rocket was not merely a weapon, but a statement of technological advantage, human ingenuity, and daring adaptation. And as commanders observed the unfolding battles, they took meticulous note of ranges, angles, and patterns, adjusting orders to capitalize on the unprecedented penetration capability, while engineers documented the results, ensuring that subsequent units could replicate, refine, and maximize the effects. And through all of this, the rifle's rifling change, once labeled reckless, proved not only effective but revolutionary, shifting doctrine, reshaping battlefield expectations, and redefining what infantry forces could accomplish against armored threats. And the soldiers, moving through smoke, debris, and the chaos of active engagements, felt the synergy of training, innovation, and real-time adaptation, exploiting every crack, angle, and psychological advantage, while simultaneously managing fear, fatigue, and the unrelenting awareness that a single misstep could be fatal. And as rounds continued to strike, targets crumpling under the force previously deemed impossible, every observer, officer, and soldier absorbed the extraordinary spectacle, understanding that what had begun in the gunsmith's workshop with sparks, oil, and daring calculations had now manifested in controlled, repeatable battlefield supremacy, a weaponized convergence of human ingenuity, mechanical audacity, and tactical genius. And as night approached, shadows stretching across the churned terrain, soldiers remained vigilant, adapting to each environmental change, enemy maneuver, and tactical nuance, while the enemy struggled to maintain coherence under continuous psychological and material pressure. Their own armor, once a symbol of invulnerability, now vulnerable to each precisely guided rocket, forcing hesitation, mistakes, and incremental retreats. And as commanders and soldiers alike reflected on the impact of the bazooka's newfound penetration, they realized that the combination of daring rifling, rigorous training, and battlefield adaptation had created a tool that transcended expectations, reshaping engagements, morale, and the strategic balance in real time. And in this immersive crucible of action, tension, and innovation, every rocket fired, every tank disabled, every tactical decision reinforced the narrative of courage, ingenuity, and audacious engineering, demonstrating that one gunsmith's calculated risk, once considered reckless, had fundamentally altered the possibilities of infantry anti-armor warfare, inspiring awe, respect, and unbroken engagement from all who bore witness. Whether in the field or in future accounts of the extraordinary fusion of technology, human skill, and battlefield daring that allowed soldiers to pierce steel with precision, efficacy, and unprecedented confidence, creating a story that would captivate, enthrall, and leave an indelible mark on military history and the imagination of every observer, ensuring that the daring, suspense, and heroism of those first engagements would be remembered not only for the feats of destruction, but for the extraordinary human and mechanical ingenuity that made them possible. As the bazookas equipped with the gunsmith's daring rifling, modification were deployed across multiple units. The battlefield transformed into a theater of unprecedented tension, strategy, and raw psychological intensity. For soldiers who had once approached armored threats with caution, now moved with a combination of calculated aggression and cautious confidence. Aware that their rockets, forged through audacious innovation, carried the lethal potential to pierce steel and alter the outcome of any engagement. And as waves of enemy armor advanced across frozen terrain, open fields, and debris-littered avenues, the soldiers adapted in real time. Their movements a seamless integration of training, instinct, and the tactical advantage conferred by the extraordinary penetration capability of the rifled bazookas, and with each rocket fired, the air resonated with the roar of propulsion, the whistle of flight, and the explosive shattering of metal that reverberated across the landscape, freezing both allies and adversaries for fleeting moments in awe and tension. While commanders meticulously noted trajectories, angles, and impact zones, adjusting orders dynamically to maximize the strategic effect of every shot. And as soldiers coordinated in squads, units, and battalions, the rhythm of engagement became almost musical. Each rocket, each maneuver, each burst of concentrated fire, contributing to a choreography of destruction and control that transformed fear into empowerment, hesitation into opportunity, and chaos into orchestrated dominance. And the enemy, confronted by a force whose capabilities now exceeded all prior expectations, experienced an escalating psychological strain, their confidence undermined by repeated penetrations, unexpected losses, and the relentless pressure of a weapon whose effectiveness seemed almost supernatural, forcing miscalculations, unplanned retreats, and desperate improvisation under fire, while the Americans, fully attuned to the new tactical possibilities, exploited every hesitation, angle, and weak point, using the enhanced penetration not merely to destroy vehicles, but to dictate enemy movement, isolate threats, and assert control over the tempo and flow of the battle. And as smoke, dust, and fire blurred lines of sight, the soldiers relied on acute observation, experience, and anticipatory reasoning, adjusting in microseconds to shifting terrain, environmental conditions, and enemy maneuvers, turning uncertainty into a force multiplier for skill, coordination, and morale. And as reports of successful penetrations, strategic disruption, and enemy confusion reached higher command, planning adapted instantly, orders were revised, and subsequent waves of deployment integrated both the mechanical advantage of the rifles and the psychological edge it conferred, reinforcing cohesion, initiative, and relentless pressure across all units, while the enemy struggled to comprehend the sudden vulnerability of their armored divisions, recalibrating strategy amidst escalating fear, fatigue, and uncertainty. And as the battle progressed, individual acts of courage, ingenuity, and rapid improvisation multiplied the effectiveness of the bazookas, with soldiers exploiting terrain, cover, timing, and the precise capabilities of their weapons to execute maneuvers that compounded impact, disrupted coordination, and magnified both psychological and material effects. And the gunsmith's reckless rifling change, now proven in repeated engagements, stood as the fulcrum around which the battlefield pivoted, transforming not only physical outcomes but the morale, initiative, and tactical imagination of both sides. And as dusk fell, painting the smoke-filled sky with shades of fire and shadow, the cumulative effect of every rocket, every tactical choice, and every soldier's adaptation had reshaped the battlefield landscape, leaving enemies hesitant, commanders alert, and soldiers inspired by the extraordinary capability that had emerged from a single act of technical courage. And the interplay of strategy, human response, and mechanical innovation created an atmosphere of sustained suspense, tension and engagement where every movement, decision, and rocket carried potential for both triumph and catastrophe, reinforcing the narrative that audacious ingenuity, disciplined adaptation, and battlefield awareness were inseparable. And as night approached, the battlefield bore the marks of relentless human effort, engineering brilliance and psychological pressure, leaving an indelible impression on every participant, observer, and subsequent chronicler, demonstrating that what began as a reckless experiment in a quiet workshop had, through courage, calculation, and human skill, become a decisive instrument of tactical mastery, reshaping warfare, inspiring awe, and ensuring that the extraordinary combination of innovation, suspense, and battlefield execution would be remembered, studied and celebrated as a pivotal moment where human ingenuity and mechanical daring converged to change the rules of engagement forever, creating a story that demanded undivided attention, unbroken suspense, and total immersion for anyone who would witness, read, or experience the full narrative of how one gunsmith's daring decision revolutionized the battlefield, elevated morale, and instilled fear in previously invulnerable enemy forces, a testament to the transformative power of audacious thinking applied with precision, discipline, and relentless courage. As the battle raged on, the soldiers began to feel the full weight of the human cost alongside the extraordinary capabilities of their newly rifled bazookas. For every rocket that penetrated steel, every tank disabled, carried not only the promise of tactical dominance, but also the haunting reminder of lives imperiled. The echoes of explosions and cries of comrades intertwining with the roar of advancing machinery and the persistent hum of anticipation that had gripped the battlefield since the first tests. And as medics moved swiftly among the wounded, stabilizing, evacuating, and triaging under the relentless pressure of ongoing engagements, the soldiers themselves reflected on the precarious balance of survival, innovation, and courage that had carried them through, recognizing that the audacious rifling change, though mechanically brilliant, demanded precise skill, unwavering focus, and split-second judgment, and that any lapse could mean catastrophic loss. While commanders observed, recalculated, and reoriented strategies, integrating both the mechanical advantage and the psychological impact of a weapon that had proven capable of altering armored dynamics in ways previously thought impossible. And as the soldiers moved through shattered terrain, navigating craters, rubble, and remnants of destroyed vehicles, each footstep, glance, and decision reflected the intense learning curve imposed by the combination of human vulnerability and the newfound lethal potential of their weapons, transforming every micro-moment into an exercise in awareness, calculation, and courage. And as the enemy, confronted by repeated and devastating penetrations, struggled to maintain cohesion, morale, and effective countermeasures, the cumulative psychological strain began to shape their decisions, slowing advance, forcing hesitation, and creating openings that could be exploited with precise timing and tactical insight, while the American soldiers, fully attuned to both the material and psychological advantages conferred by the bazookas, coordinated maneuvers, communicated seamlessly, and executed strategies that maximized impact while minimizing exposure, transforming what could have been chaos into controlled sequences of effectiveness. And as dusk approached, the interplay of light, smoke, and shadow added layers of suspense, complicating visibility, timing, and targeting. Yet the soldiers' training, observation, and adaptation allowed them to navigate uncertainty with extraordinary focus, exploiting environmental nuances, enemy miscalculations, and the unparalleled penetration capability to shape outcomes decisively, and every successful engagement reinforced morale, confidence, and the psychological dominance of the units, while simultaneously reminding them of the fragility of life, the precision required to survive, and the extraordinary consequences of both action and inaction. And as commanders consolidated reports, updated strategies, and recalibrated plans for subsequent waves of engagement, the soldiers internalized a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of mechanical innovation, human skill, and battlefield psychology, recognizing that the gunsmith's daring modification had not only enhanced lethality, but also fundamentally reshaped perception, initiative, and the flow of combat. And as the night deepened, bringing cooler temperatures, longer shadows, and the lingering tension of unresolved engagement, every soldier felt the profound mixture of exhaustion, alertness, awe, and suspense that had characterized the battle from its inception. The lingering adrenaline and heightened senses, a constant reminder that survival and success rested upon continuous focus, adaptive thinking, and the disciplined execution of skills amplified by extraordinary innovation. And as small units regrouped, repaired, and repositioned, the lessons of the day crystallized. Courage, ingenuity, preparation, and audacious technical skill were inseparable from effective deployment, psychological impact, and battlefield mastery. And the soldiers, having witnessed firsthand the transformative power of a single gunsmith's daring rifling change, carried forward not only a weapon but an ethos of calculated risk, relentless focus, and adaptive brilliance that would define subsequent engagements, inspire awe among comrades, and instill caution and fear in the enemy. And as reports filtered back to command, detailing both tactical successes and human sacrifices, the interplay of mechanical innovation, human courage, and psychological momentum became undeniable, a narrative of suspense, heroism, and calculated risk that demanded attention, reflection, and awe. And as the final hours of this engagement approached, the soldiers, commanders, and observers collectively sensed the looming climax, the moment when accumulated skill, courage, tactical advantage, and the audacious ingenuity of a single rifling change would converge to determine the ultimate outcome, a crescendo of suspense, decisiveness, and historical significance that would resonate far beyond the battlefield, embedding itself in memory, narrative, and legacy, ensuring that the extraordinary combination of innovation, human endurance, and tactical mastery would be remembered, studied, and celebrated as a defining chapter in the story of warfare, where audacious technical daring met disciplined human action to create moments of extraordinary suspense, drama, and irreversible impact that would captivate, inspire, and engage anyone who bore witness to the saga of the Bazooka rocket's piercing steel, altering battles and transforming history itself. As the final moments of the engagement approached, the battlefield, scarred by fire, debris, and the echoes of countless rockets, bore witness to the extraordinary convergence of human skill, mechanical innovation, and the audacious brilliance of one gunsmith's rifling change. And as soldiers, exhausted yet exhilarated, moved through smoke-choked craters, twisted steel and shattered terrain, each action, glance, and breath carried the weight of anticipation. For every rocket fired, every tank penetrated, and every tactical maneuver executed had led to this decisive moment. And commanders, standing amidst the chaos, recalculated positions, reinforced key points, and issued precise, adaptive orders, ensuring that the advantage conferred by the bazooka's unprecedented penetration was fully realized while minimizing risk. And the soldiers, operating with seamless coordination, instinct, and training amplified by the extraordinary capability of their weapons, struck with unerring accuracy, exploiting enemy hesitation, terrain, and timing to systematically neutralize remaining armored threats, while the enemy, confronted by repeated and irreversible penetrations, confusion and fear, faltered under pressure. Their cohesion fractured and their morale eroded, creating openings that allowed for decisive tactical victories. And as the smoke cleared intermittently under the fading light, the true scale of the transformation became apparent. The weapon that had begun as a reckless experiment in a quiet workshop had now irrevocably shifted the dynamics of combat, redefined infantry anti-armor capabilities, and instilled a lasting psychological edge across the battlefield. And the soldiers, aware of both the human cost and the monumental significance of their actions, moved with heightened awareness, balancing relief, exhaustion, and focus, understanding that every decision, shot, and maneuver was both tactical and symbolic, a living testament to the power of innovation, courage, and human adaptability. And as the final rounds of rockets tore through the remaining armored positions, the battlefield became a tableau of calculated destruction. Bravery and mechanical genius with soldiers, commanders, and engineers alike observing the culmination of relentless testing, improvisation, and disciplined execution, while the enemy, demoralized and disoriented, withdrew in measured chaos, their own calculations shattered, and as night descended, shadows lengthened across the scorched earth. Punctuated by lingering smoke and the faint glow of smoldering metal, the soldiers consolidated positions, tended to the wounded, and reflected on the extraordinary convergence of human daring and technical mastery that had made this outcome possible. And the gunsmith, removed from the front lines yet intimately connected through every rocket, every engagement, and every tactical success, could witness the living proof of audacious innovation transforming warfare in real time. The ripples of a single, seemingly reckless change magnified into strategic advantage, psychological dominance, and historical significance, and as commanders filed final reports, highlighting not only material results but the impact on morale, initiative, and battlefield perception, it became evident that the story of this weapon, this battle, and the men who wielded it would endure as a testament to the extraordinary potential of human ingenuity applied with courage, precision, and relentless focus. And as soldiers paused to catch their breath, gazing across the field littered with twisted metal, cratered earth, and the remnants of armored might, they experienced a profound mixture of triumph, awe, and reflection, fully aware that they had participated in a moment where history, technology, and human bravery intersected, creating an unforgettable climax of suspense, resolution, and emotional intensity. And as the final echoes of the battle faded into the night, carrying with them the reverberation of rockets, human endeavor, and mechanical genius, the narrative of audacity, skill, and courage crystallized into an enduring legend, a story that would captivate, inspire, and engage generations, illustrating how one gunsmith's daring decision, once considered reckless, had unleashed a cascade of events culminating in a battlefield transformation so complete, so absolute, and so extraordinary that it would be remembered, studied, and revered as the ultimate testament to human innovation, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of excellence, leaving an indelible mark on history, military strategy, and the imagination of all who bore witness to the astonishing reality of bazooka rockets piercing 8 inches of steel, reshaping conflict and redefining what was possible in the art of war, a climactic crescendo of suspense, heroism, and mechanical brilliance that ensured viewers would remain riveted, absorbed, and inspired from the first moment to the final echo of this unforgettable story.